This small, sheltered section of the garden has been reserved for plants which were used to dye yarn and fabric. Before the discovery of synthetic dye in 1856, all dyes were sourced from plants and sometimes minerals or animal products. In the 1620s, fabric was made from either wool or linen, with cotton and silk being rare and expensive imported products. The quantity of plant material required to carry out the dyeing process would have meant that these plants would have been grown by specialists off-site, so what you see here is an illustration of the plants used. The three main dye colours produced were blue, yellow and red, produced respectively from woad, weld and madder. Other plants were also used, and we will return to those in due course. Of the big three, woad has the most interesting story to tell. Used as a type of war paint by the British tribes opposing the Romans, woad was produced in large quantities in the 16th and 17th centuries. When used to dye wool, it was the fleece rather than the yarn that was dyed, because dyeing in the wool allowed for natural variations in the dye to keep the cloth of a uniform colour. The production of woad dye involved fermentation, and with the need to add urine to make the dye more effective, it was not a neighbourhood-friendly process. Not only was it smelly, but in the Elizabethan period there were concerns that too much land was being used to grow woad, and so restrictions were placed on its cultivation. While woad is a biennial plant, living for only 2 years, madder is a strongly growing perennial whose roots were used to give colours in the red range, including for the famous British military uniforms. Finally, weld, another biennial, was cultivated to produce yellow, and is probably the oldest dye plant known to humankind. Of course, the colour palette wasn't limited to 3, so for example the famous Lincoln green favoured by Robin Hood was a combination of the blue of woad and the yellow of weld. Before looking at some of the other dye plants, we need to explain not only how variations in intensity and depth of colour were achieved, but how the dye was literally fixed to the fibres of the cloth so that it did not wash out or fade. The dyeing process included the use of a mordant, a fixing agent, and these varied according to the results required. A very commonly used mordant was alum, which was originally imported from Italy until it was discovered in the shale rock on the North Yorkshire coast. Another was salt, while human urine, such an essential ingredient in the production of gunpowder, was also used as a fixer of dyes. In addition, the actual vessel used was important, so that onion skins used in an iron pot produced a khaki colour, while the same in a copper pot gave a bright yellow. A number of the other dye plants growing here have more than one use. The humble pot marigold gives yellow and orange colours, was edible and was used to treat eye problems. Ladies' bedstraw not only produces colours in the orange range, but was used to dye red Leicester cheese, which could well have been made here at the 1620s House and Garden, while meadowsweet produces a range of colours, including black, according to the mordant used, and the scent of the flowers makes it popular to scatter on floors to mask household smells. We are all familiar with rhubarb and onion, but perhaps not as dye plants, while tansy, which produced a yellow dye, was an essential ingredient in tansy pudding, eaten at the end of Lent, and which even acted as an insect repellent. Yes, the eating of tansy pudding was a sort of penance. We will conclude with 3 specialist dye plants. We have struggled to cultivate Saffron Crocuses in this location, unlike at Saffron Walden in Essex, but dyer's chamomile, which produces a lemon yellow, and dyer's greenweed, a similar colour, both thrive here.